for many, 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 many years. Some 20 some years later, I was at the VA seeking help because I was going through things and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just felt like the world was everything was just overwhelming. The counselor that I was talking to, she looked in my medical records and she said,
Hello, and welcome to our first ever episode of Still Standing. This is the untold story about veterans, the secrets that they keep, we don't know and can't see, the invisible part. We're especially honored to launch the podcast around the 4th of July. It's just before the 4th of July, right? Really. And with our nation in turmoil like this, we need to let the veterans know that we support them in every fashion.
and for many of us, this holiday, the 4th of July, brings up a lot of good memories, bad memories, and also some triggers. So here at the Hope Center, we decided to create this podcast because we think that veterans deserve more than just parades. Who's tired of parades? Anyway, we feel like veterans deserve healing, hope, and a safe space to be heard.
Whether you're a veteran, a family member, or someone who simply cares, you are now a part of the Hope Center community, and we are so glad you're here.
My name is Garry Lewis. I'm an outreach case manager for Hope Incorporated, and my esteemed colleagues are.
I'm Christina. I'm a peer support specialist, and I provide support, guidance, and mentorship to the veterans that we service here at the Hope Center.
I'm Jocelyn, also known as Dr. J to some of my clients. I am not a medical doctor. I have a PhD, but I'm the healthcare navigator here for Hope Center, and I help connect our veterans to healthcare, mental health care, dental care, eye care, or any other healthcare concerns which they may have.
So do not write in and ask Dr. J any medical questions. I'm going to tell you right now from experience, she's going to say, call your doctor.
That's right.
Do you see how he stole my little bit? I was supposed to say that. I needed to do the disclaimer. But anyway, today we're going to discuss Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox, who basically this is the idea behind this podcast and what it was established for, to prevent suicide with veterans. But my first question is, what is a staff sergeant?
Okay, listeners and watchers. So Mr. Lewis is not a veteran, and he does not have a whole lot of experience being around veterans. So I'm in training with him right now, teaching him our lingo, and he actually used the word latrine yesterday, so kudos. A staff sergeant is a person of authority. A staff sergeant is a non-commissioned officer in the Army, and he is in a leadership position. And it is not easy to get that rank, E6. And the E stands for enlisted. So you start from E1 and go all the way up to E6. It goes all the way up to E9, actually. So he was an E6 staff sergeant, and that means he was leading others. People's lives were in his hands.
Okay, he had a lot of control, a lot of, I guess would be moxie, or someone who will follow, especially if they gave him that position. He joined in 2014. You have to think about that. Most people don't climb the ranks, at least I don't think they do. We're going to discuss briefly what Staff Sergeant, his history was. Let's get into the person first. He graduated out of high school 2012. There, he was on the wrestling team. He also played in the band. He was someone that people idolized, and he didn't mind sharing anything that he could. He was helpful, more or less, that we know of. There's not much out there about him that's like intricate that we could find. But we do know that he was one of those people that you will want to follow, and he was definitely a leader. In 2014, he joined the Army. He was stationed in Italy, of all places. So he stayed there, and after, I guess he did his deployment there, and he came back to the United States and he started into Bennington. Am I right? No,
Fort Benning,
Bennington,
Fort Benning,
Fort
Georgia.
Benning, Georgia.
Mhm.
There he became a staff sergeant, supervising. He was a sniper instructor. So 2000s, in other words, this young man had all his life in front of him, and he was on a roll, seamlessly, like nothing was against him. No signs of being depressed, no signs of regret, anything like that. And in 2020, during the height of the pandemic, he committed suicide. There was no note. There was nothing to explain why, and we gonna go into other parts of mental health at another podcast. But basically, we needed to recognize the signs or speak about that some other time.
Sid, I wanted to add too that also you can't always tell when somebody is depressed. You know, a lot of people assume that somebody's walking around sad and miserable, and you'll be able to tell that you'll always notice the signs. But sometimes it's those ones we consider to be the strongest. You know, our strongest friends that we have to check on.
Right.
They may be suffering in silence. They may be smiling a lot. You never know what somebody's actually going through. So sometimes, you know, it's just be that listening ear for them. And when they
Mhm.
tell you that they need help, you know, if they reach out to you, please assist them. Please help connect them to mental health care. And I'm sorry, Christina.
And the way you help is you got to ask the question.
Right.
You
But
got
at
to
the
ask.
same
Most definitely.
But at the same time, when you ask the question, you make sure that you don't lead into your side. You want to be open, receptive. You want to hear what this person has to say. So
Right.
not too much involved with your talking. You need for this person to vent out
Right.
in order to understand that, hey, I may not be where you are, but I understand, or I'm trying to understand.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask that question, as you say, because you know, a lot of people think if I ask, "Are you thinking about killing yourself?" that means that'll put that thought into their head, and that's not the case. You know, so you have to be willing to ask that question and be receptive to the answers that you get.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to start off. Are you okay?
Right.
Because
It's very true.
I remember reading that Staff Sergeant Fox was always laughing, always smiling, always
Right.
making other people laugh, always helping other people, and that's why nobody had a clue.
Right.
No.
Nobody had a clue that anything was wrong with him, that anything was
Exactly.
going on, that he was
And
feeling any type of depression or anything. And that's
Right.
the
and you
scariest
couldn't
part.
tell.
And you're very right.
And you couldn't tell just by looking, just like Dr.
Right.
Lewis
You
said.
don't know just by looking at somebody
That's true.
what they're thinking, or what they're going through.
Because it is this was established to prevent or help prevent suicide among veterans. So he's the main reason. There's several other reasons that it's out there, but he's the main reason why this became into law. At the same time, we talked yesterday briefly about this, and at the same time he committed suicide. What happened to him? What happened to Christina on July
Oh, I'm going to get
20th?
Yeah,
into
she's
that
gonna lead
right
into
now.
that.
I'm gonna get
Okay.
into that right now. So I did some research, and y'all see, I'm shared today. I did
Mm.
some,
I love it.
and
Yeah.
viewers, we like to laugh because this is such a serious subject, and we don't want to trigger anybody that's out there watching us.
Right.
We want you to listen and hear what we're saying, but we want you to still feel good about yourself and laugh with us. Laugh at us if you want to. You can do that too. We laugh at ourselves all the time. So, so in my research, I found that the Staff Sergeant Fox Suicide Prevention Program, and I'm going to have to shorten that, is a portion of the Commander John Scott Hannon Veterans Mental Health Care Improvement Act. I had to read that. That is a long name. So this bill was bipartisan legislation, and it was introduced by two senators, Jerry Moran, a Republican from Kansas, and John Tester, a Democrat from Montana. The bill was named in honor of retired Navy SEAL Commander John Scott Hannon, who was diagnosed with PTSD, bipolar disorder, and a traumatic brain injury, and he served 23 years in the Navy before he retired. And as I said, he was in the Navy SEALs, and he was
Okay.
not just in the Navy SEALs. He was a leader of the Navy SEAL 2 team,
In
of
other
SEAL
words,
2
he had the
team,
vision.
Team SEAL 2, something like that.
After
I
learning
don't know
that,
Navy
excuse
talk.
After
Hmm.
learning that, she also mentioned a little tidbit that this man had his hands in almost every aspect of the service. He was just that type of person. To me, he kept this going because I guess he wanted to cover, to me, he wanted to cover the fact that he was depressed. Maybe, maybe not. But he was active in all aspect of his life, in and out of the service. I thought
Well,
that was amazing.
actually, in my reading, I found that he used all his community service as a part of his own recovery. Um, so it was like things that he kept active, and knowing that he was helping other people. He called his issues, his illnesses, he called them his invisible wounds of war. And despite his invisible wounds of war, Hannon volunteered with the National Alliance for mental illness in Montana, and he also helped develop group therapy at the VA in Montana. He worked with a whole lot of organizations, like you said, Gary. He did a whole lot. He worked with animals. He introduced having service animals for veterans. And he also worked with the Habitat of Humanity, where he worked with at-risk youth. So we're talking about a person that was very active and doing a whole lot, always busy. And he was very passionate about improving veterans' access to mental health care, which is why this bill was named after him. Because although he was so passionate, Commander Hannon committed suicide on February 25th, 2018, at the age of 46.
What
Now,
coinc- what
Chairman
coincide with
Moran
me? That
spoke on the Senate floor, July 21st of 2020, to urge his colleagues to vote for this bill and pass this bill. On that same day, Army Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox committed suicide at his home in Columbus, Georgia. So the bill was passed by the Senate, and then it went on to the House of Representatives, and it was signed into law by then President Donald Trump during his first administration on October 17th of 2020. And talking about Staff Sergeant Parker Fox, he comes in on Part 38 of the bill. That part honors Staff Sergeant Fox, and it speaks on VA grants for community organizations. Um, the Staff Sergeant Fox SPGP, I'm going to say, which is for Suicide Prevention Grant Program. Y'all remember that, write it down. It offers it offers grants to non-VA organizations that provide mental health services to our veterans. This gives more access to mental health to people that are in rural areas and hard to reach areas. And it also opened the door for more dialogue. More people are talking about mental health. Mental health is no longer a stigma. Um, Awareness has been increased so much, and veterans are no longer shamed or made to feel like they're weak for seeking help. And that is the key, because as a soldier, I can tell you, as a soldier in the Army, you're told to suck it up and drive on. Anybody who served in the Army knows that term. Suck it up, soldier, drive on. Suck it up and drive on. And you do it for so long. Like me, for instance, I was in the Army 9.5 years, close to 10 years. And for close to 10 years, I was sucking it up and driving on no matter what. And that became a part of who I am. So when I got out of the Army, my mom used to always tell me, you treat your son like you're a drill sergeant, because I was strict. But it wasn't that I was trying to be a drill sergeant. It was just, I believe you got to suck it up and drive on. because the world keeps turning no matter what goes on, no matter what you're going through. And I can tell you, when I was in the military, I was sexually assaulted, and I was told to suck it up and drive on. And I did for many, 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 many years. Some 20 some years later, I was at the VA seeking help because I was going through things, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just felt like the world was just, everything was just overwhelming. And the counselor that I was talking to, she looked in my medical records and she said, "Oh, I see that you've been diagnosed with PTSD with MST." I said, "MST? What is that?" And she said those 3 words: military sexual trauma. When she said those 3 words, it triggered a reaction from me that I was not ready for. I didn't know that I was still dealing with that. I didn't know that I was going to have that trigger. I didn't know. I started trembling. I started crying uncontrollably, and I couldn't stop. It wasn't that I was just crying. No, I couldn't stop. I was not in control of myself. Those 3 words triggered such a reaction out of me that it made me seek help. I realized I needed help. So a lot of us don't know that we need help because we just suck it up and drive on. We keep on going. And that's in any branch of the military. You suck it up and you drive on.
That's the mentality, though. That's what they teach you. But once you get out here in the public, you bring that mentality back. So
Oh, yeah.
therefore, you're not willing to speak about our dislikes or what we didn't do right or anything. I am so sorry about your situation. It should have been brought in front. It should
Thank
have
you
been.
for
It would
that
have triggered
powerful,
everybody.
heartfelt testimony.
Yes, thank
It's
you very much.
Yeah, me ready to cry.
I can tell you, for a long time after that, I could not watch certain things on TV. I still to this day can't watch certain things on TV. But for a long time, I couldn't even talk about it. If I said the word assault, it would trigger a reaction. I would cry uncontrollably, and I couldn't tell my story. So therapy did help. I'm not saying that I'm healed, because you never really heal, but
you understand.
I can cope.
Okay.
I learned how to cope, and learning how to cope is the biggest step, because I'm going to say this. In 2020, it was estimated that at least 20 veterans committed suicide every single day. And of the 20, at least 14 of the 20 had not had any treatment or care at the VA. So if you have 20 people that died by suicide and only 6 of them were receiving treatment, the other 14 were just out there suffering. That's why this grant is so important. The SSG Fox SPGP is so important because we have people that are out there suffering and they don't know how to get help. They don't know the first step. So I feel like me telling my story is going to help somebody else, because I know I think the statistics is like 1 of every 3 women have been assaulted in some type of way, and it may be lower than that. I don't even know, but I know it's a very high number. It's crazy, and that's just not just in the military. That's worldwide. So
And they suffer in
I
silence.
guarantee you, there's somebody that you know that has gone through something like that and never said anything. Shoot, I just told my mother about it a few years ago. And I've been out of the Army since 1995. So I never told her because I didn't want her to know. I didn't want her to think that she did anything wrong. Because, as parents, we tend to blame ourselves for everything that our children go through.
Right.
But I didn't want her to feel guilty in any kind of way for letting me go in the military, which she had no choice because I was 18. I signed up on my own. But you know what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay.
If people
But it's
understand.
just it's crazy because right now in 2025, somebody gave me statistics, and in 2025, we have at least 17.6 veterans die by suicide every single day. That's still too much.
Right.
That's
Even
still
one,
too
You
much,
want that number to be
especially when
even
there's
one
zero.
help out there.
suicide is too much. Even one, and
Right.
this is one of the main reasons why this podcast is here, so we can relate. You can talk. You can feel free about what's going on. You no longer have to hide behind shame, guilt, or anything like that. So this podcast is designed for individuals like that. Again, I'm sorry about your trauma.
Thank
Anything
you.
Katrina
Too.
that. Okay.
I'm okay. But so Jocelyn, I know Dr. J here. She's got all the resources for you. She can tell you if you do need help or if you know someone that needs help. She can tell you where to go.
Thank you again, Christina, for that very powerful testimony, and for sharing that very inspirational and thought-provoking information with us. Say you touched me. I'm like, oh, that really moved me. And I'm not a veteran, so I can't claim to completely understand, but I do have a lot of family members and friends, in every branch of the military.
Mhm.
So I do have some sense. I can't say I know all of the lingo. I won't even claim to do. I know a little bit though,
Teach you.
just enough,
I teach
just
you.
enough to understand, to
I already know
comprehend,
more than
especially when I'm
me.
talking to the other veterans. And but I would say this information that I'm sharing is for those of you who are in Louisiana. But if you're in another state, I would say please contact your local VA to find out how to be connected to mental health care.
Yeah.
I urge you, please do so. The fastest way here in Louisiana is to go to the VA mental health walk-in clinic in the New Orleans ER. This is the emergency room. It's located at 2400 Canal Street, Building J, and that's New Orleans, Louisiana 70119. You can go Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Just walk in, tell them that you need to speak to a mental health counselor, and they can connect you with one. Um, and if you prefer to have an appointment, however, because that is one of the caveats, they will see those who have an appointment first. If you're there um, at the walk-in clinic, they'll have to take those who have appointments first. So it may be a little while before they can see you, but definitely please still go. That's always an option. Just
Mhm.
walk in. And if you would prefer an appointment, you can call the main number at 1-800-935-8387, or you can contact the VA Health Connect at 1-833-363-1063. Or you can also go through My Health Event. If you prefer to do that online through the portal, that's also a fast way to do it. You can tell your primary care physician at the VA that you want to speak to a mental health counselor. There are so many ways to connect. They do have mental health care available at several locations, not just in New Orleans, but also in Baton Rouge. They have at Bogalusa, Franklin, Houma, Slidell, and St. John VA clinics. They have VA suicide prevention care coordinators at both the New Orleans and the Houma VA clinics. Um, so if you wish to speak with one of them, you may do so as well. If you feel like you're having suicidal thoughts or ideations. Um, we also have the 988 crisis and chat line. I urge everybody, that's not just for veterans, but if you're a veteran, you can call 988 and press 1 to speak to a trained counselor. It's private, it's confidential, it's free. If you prefer to chat, because I know there are some who prefer to chat instead of talking on the phone. That's me. So I say I'm a little bit of an introvert, so I'm a little shy. But you can text 838-255, and it's available 24/7, and you can speak with a trained counselor. And I urge people to definitely do that. And that's not instead of going to the VA for mental health care, but that's in conjunction with it. If you're having any thoughts, and it's not just if you're feeling suicidal, if you just need somebody to talk to, if you're lonely and isolated, if you're feeling depressed, or if you just want to vent, Like they say, even if you're feeling happy, you just need somebody to talk to. If you don't have a very strong support network, just give them a call. There's somebody who's there who's willing to listen, and they're not going to tell your business. So call them. Just say, hey, I need to talk. I need to share this news with somebody. So
Better
that's
than
always an
talking to your
option.
family because they're gonna share
Exactly.
your business. They're gonna talk.
Right. And you're right.
Well, not only that, you consider telling people that you
Right.
know or have been in the service. You
Right.
don't necessarily have to be you. You
Right.
don't push them. Oh, you crazy. Let's go here or something like that. You don't do
Right.
that. You encourage them with the information that she gave. So
Right.
come on, let's do this. I think you're depressed. Are you depressed?
And it
Always
also,
open-ended question.
right. And there's another option too. If you're a combat veteran, you can always go to the New Orleans Vet Center. If you would prefer to speak to a trained counselor in a non-medical setting, and they can also help connect you to VA services. Sorry, having a brain fog right there, but they're located at 1250 Porter Street on the 4th floor, and that's Suite 400 in New Orleans, Louisiana. Their direct line is 504-507-4977, and just give them a call and let them know that you need to speak to a counselor, and they'll help patch you through to the services that you need.
And I just want to say that I don't know what the criteria is, but I know most veterans do qualify for mental health care, if not
Yes.
all veterans.
Right.
Even if you served 1 week and got kicked out.
Right. So even if you
Because
don't
you punched
qualify
that
for
drill
VA health
sergeant.
care, still check. You still may actually qualify for mental health care.
Yes,
And that's one of the
most
criteria.
veterans.
Right.
If
And
you
if
do
you,
not qualify for medical care,
right,
you still qualify for mental health care.
right.
There's a big
And if you've
difference.
experienced military sexual trauma, then you can also qualify for mental health care. You don't have to
So
be eligible for the health care for that. And also, for those who actually would prefer to seek mental health care outside of the VA, you can still go contact your VA primary care doctor and ask them for a referral, and they can use the community network to patch you through to some of the mental health clinics in the surrounding area. And that's not just here, but that's in other states too.
so you
And if
can
there's
see how
anybody watching that is not registered with your local VA, go register.
Yes.
Trust me. Go and register. If you don't want to receive health care at the VA, still register with the
Right.
VA.
so
And in
you
another
see how
podcast, we'll talk
important.
about some benefits that you can get
Right.
because you've registered with the VA. But register with the VA.
So
You
you
have
see
nothing to
how
lose.
important this podcast could be, word of mouth travel. And once you realize, or once it's out there, this podcast can blow up simply because there are a lot of people suffering silently and don't know the information that we just gave out to them.
Right.
This is an
So,
important podcast.
exactly. So no matter what, just please, no matter what option you choose, please seek mental health care. There's no shame in that. Please reach out to a credible source so that you can receive that help.
And come on back and watch us again.
Please do. Thank you for joining
We
us.
like to talk.
Oh yeah, you can't tell. You can't tell. You really have to write your information down because people be stealing it. So we do have to talk. I'm not saying anything, Christina or Dr. Lewis,
Oh,
but people do steal your information and use it as if it's theirs. But all jokes aside, we are here to help, and
yes,
this
we are.
podcast should be able to put you on the right track or put someone that you might know on the right track.
Right. Definitely agree. Well, we thank you for joining us today at the Still Standing podcast for Hope Center, and I hope you'll be joining us again for future episodes.
Thank you.